Hey everybody, it's Prince's Friend, and we're back with the review that we're doing today for Under the Cherry Moon, the movie. Now, before we actually get to that, I do want to go ahead and say thank you to everybody who's been watching the videos. I actually just posted a video about how long this is all going to take, and there's been a lot of really good conversations going on. I'm really happy that you guys like what I do here, and I'm going to keep doing it for you. Thumbs up. And again, I do have some other videos that I'll be posting up pretty soon here. But let's go ahead and get underway. Under the Cherry Moon was released on July 4th, 1986, and it stars Prince, Jerome Benton, Steven Berkoff, and Kristen Scott Thomas, and Francesca Anise. It was also directed by Prince. Now, if any of those names sound familiar, it's because, obviously, Prince is Prince. Jerome Benton is from the time. Steven Berkoff, if you look at his IMDb page, he basically plays the villain in any movie that he's in, because he just comes off that way. This was actually Kristen Scott Thomas's very first movie, but she's done other stuff since then, and it's actually a lot of really good roles that she's played. Francesca Anise is actually pretty famous over in France, but I don't really think she got used to her full potential in this movie, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. How this movie came to be. So it was shot between September and November of 1985. So September, October, November, so 3 months. In the south of France. Prince didn't actually have to talk his way into another movie this time around. The success of Purple Rain was really enough that it gave him basically, you know, an a la carte, like, what do you want? And you can do it. I mean, despite the confusing release of Around the World in a Day and the effect that it had on its fan base, he still had a very large presence. The movie was supposed to be directed by a music video director named Mary Lambert, but Prince didn't like the direction that she was going in, so he fired her and said, "I'm taking over." No one really batted an eye. I mean, this is Prince after all. I mean, that's just how that works sometimes. The female lead was also supposed to be played by Susanna Melvoin from The Family, and who happened to be his girlfriend at the time. But then it came to light that she can't act. So they had to find somebody else, and actually Kristen Scott Thomas, she auditioned and she got hired, and the rest is history. So the soundtrack for Under the Cherry Moon, it was released 3 months before the movie was. Which meant it didn't do anything to help push the movie to the fans. Like, Purple Rain was released 1 month before the movie, so you had a little bit of time to digest the album and then the movie experience. The long, like a fourth of the year gone between the album and the movie didn't help the movie. The movie itself cost $12 million to make, and it made back $10.1 million in the box office. So it was technically a loss, although it probably made some back in the international. I mean, it probably didn't lose any money in the end. It probably also cost Prince some of his other films that he was hoping to make. So the basic plot of this movie is that Christopher Tracy, played by Prince, and his best friend Tricky, who is played by Jerome Benton, have traveled to France to become gigolos. The movie actually starts off with a really good synopsis of what the movie is going to be. For those of you that were surprised when he did die at the end, I mean, the movie let you know, so you shouldn't have been too surprised. The woman he dies for is named Mary, and she is played by Kristen Scott Thomas, who is a rich, smart, and really bratty. She first targets Christopher to expose him for being a money-hungry prostitute, only to actually enjoy her time with the duo, and then eventually she ends up falling in love with Christopher, which is really, really nice. All of this would just be a simple story if not for Mary's father, Isaac, played by Steven Berkoff, and he's pretty much set up for you to hate everything about him. He misses his daughter's birthday. He bribes politicians. He's controlling. He yells a lot. He cheats on his wife with the same woman that Prince is sleeping with in the movie, and has a different accent than everyone else. So he just sounds just evil. So he does like everything to keep power over Mary and to keep her away from Christopher and from Trick, up to and including manipulating the French police to straight up murder a man who didn't do anything wrong. And I want to point out that even though some of this movie is serious, the majority of it is really pushed forward by the friendship between Christopher Tracy and Tricky, and the comedy stylings of Prince and Jerome between the two, which a lot of their scenes ended up being improv. And because the two of them together are just freaking hilarious. The most famous, of course, is the Recca Stowe scene in the restaurant. Even though the movie was considered a flop, this particular scene became really well known to people who know Prince and even people who don't know about Prince. My favorite part really of that scene, though, is when he calls for the writing utensil, and he speaks in like really broken French, which really adds to the charm of the character. When he goes, "Garçon, avez-vous un crayon?" And I just love it. I think it's hilarious. Jerome actually delivers more laughs than Prince does. There's the "I slap the wave out your head" scene, and the "honey, I've loved you for years." But the prize goes to his tirade about stupid people and how much he hates them. Its truth can only come out of the mouth of someone who really doesn't have a filter between his brain and his mouth. If you go back and read any reviews for this movie, it was Jerome's comedic performance that always got the thumbs up from all of the reviewers. So unlike Purple Rain, where if you pick a character apart, they're really all kind of terrible people, Under the Cherry Moon actually tells a story of a lot of really hopeful individuals who just don't know what they want. So, as is pretty obvious, the movie is shot in black and white, which was a style Prince wanted. He wanted to make an artsy French-type film to play to stereotypes, since the film was shot in France. And really, he just really wanted to pounce on his viewer and just give them something that they didn't know was coming, because nobody would have thought that Prince would have made a black and white movie. And while a lot of people liked it, and I liked the choice itself, it actually turned off a bunch of others, which was another reason why people didn't go see it in the theaters, because they're like, a black and white movie starring Prince, this is just weird. So the direction, in my opinion, it was done by Prince. It's a little bit amateurish. It's not bad, but it has a few stylistic faults that I think could have been handled better by a veteran director. Some shots were too long, they lingered on the wrong subject, usually Prince himself, when you were supposed to be paying attention to the other person. You end up with a movie that's weird because it feels too short and too long at the same time, because I feel like there was more story to tell, but the story that was told was stretched. The music for this is used in the movie. It's well placed, but often was louder than the people who were talking, so it kind of drowned out any of the dialogue. There were also a few places where they spoke so low that to this day, I still don't know what they were saying. Like, there's a scene in the phone booth where Prince and Mary are talking, and they're like whispering to each other, but it's got music going on in the background, like large strings. He says, "Do you want?" And she says, "Yes." And he says, "No." And then he says something else, and then she says, "I want more." The sound was a problem at times, even if the music was good. Prince does a great job as a slightly narcissistic, sex-obsessed gigolo. Who would have guessed he could pull off the performance of a lifetime like this? It obviously had nothing to do with his entire career up to this point readying him for this role. I couldn't have had anything to do with that. But above his sexiness is really his sense of humor and timing, and he delivers so many great moments in this movie for real. Jerome Benton, though, he does a bang-up job. Again, he plays the humorous sidekick. It suits his build for what he's been doing in his career so far, being the sideman to Morris Day and now over to Prince. But he doesn't waste a moment in this movie. He literally steals basically every scene that he's in because he's loud, he's boisterous, and he's got genius comic timing. But I want to pay special attention to the scene of Christopher's death at the end of the movie, where he's praying to God to not take his best friend, and it's delivered so emotionally that it still makes me cry every time I watch the movie. It reminds me a lot of the movie La Bamba, if you've seen that movie, which is, again, another movie where you know from the get-go that the protagonist is going to die. So it's not the death that is the sad part, it's the people's reaction to the death. And if you don't remember the end of La Bamba with Richie's brother in tears running over to grab his mom and hug her while they're both crying, I mean, it was just, oh my god. So good on you, Jerome Benton. Definitely, like, you knocked it out of the park with that scene. Kristen Scott Thomas, she does a pretty darn good job in her role of Mary. While she played a spoiled rich girl well enough, it was the moments of genuine fun and her ability to say so much without saying a word that I think really did her best. For instance, when she and Prince near the end of the movie and they're having an argument, and she calls him a whore at the end of the movie. Like, just look at her face. She knew that she was taking a risk in saying that, and she was readying herself for a comeback or something bad was going to happen. Like, all in a split second, and you got all of that from just her expression after she says it. There are actors out there making millions of dollars that can't emote the way that she can. Under the Cherry Moon is a fun romp through a romantic comedy of Prince's design. While he didn't write the screenplay himself, it was obvious that he put his stamp on it as not just a director, but with tons of ad-libs between him and Jerome Benton. Its poor performance in the box office has nothing to do with the quality of this movie. I recently watched it with my 13-year-old. She loved the hell out of it. We were laughing our asses off. So, I mean, it still appeals to people even nowadays, even young people coming up. So it's really, really good. Unlike Purple Rain, I think that this movie isn't dependent on having a killer soundtrack to make it an excellent movie. I would give it 4 stars for it being a movie that I can return to for laughs and cries whenever I want, and it's really, really awesome. So what did you think of Under the Cherry Moon? Did you have a favorite scene? Let's talk about it in the comments and continue the conversation. And obviously, if you like this video, don't forget to like it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and may you live to see the dawn. As a slightly slips the Prince does a great job as a slightly Prince does a great Prince does a great job as a slightly narcissistic Prince does a great job as a slightly narcissistic sex obsessed. Why can't I say this?